actually can't fathom just how far these PXG irons go. Will the PXG 0311P Gen 6 irons be my new gamers? Let's go find out. I'm going to show you something that's never happened before, at least to me. 6 iron, 185 yards from the pin. This iron flies like 20 yards longer than my gamer. How does that even make sense? Like, just fathom that. 20 yards further. I normally average like 165 on a good 6 iron. On average, I was carrying this 183 point something yards. That's absolutely bonkers. To say this is like their players club as well, it's not massive. There is a lot of tech in these. The face is 15% thinner this year to get that extra ball speed. I'm definitely seeing that in my numbers at the moment. And the thing is, the controls there as well, like that flew so high. Yes, the spin is probably a little bit lower than I would see in my current gamers. It's kind of averaging in like the low 4,000s with 6 iron, but I think with any kind of club with more tech in it like this, you would expect something in the 5,000s anyway. So it's not massively low, and I do have enough height that it's stopping pretty quickly. I can't quite understand how they've managed to do this. These have to be the longest players irons on the market, hands down. I've never hit any irons so far. Even a really big game improvement club, typically, the sole feels really thick to me. I don't tend to hit it that far. I'm just not sure you can get an iron that's as long as these. Look how far that's gone. It's a 6 iron. It was 185 to here. I'm 5'4" and swing it like 82 miles an hour. It's ridiculous. Now, I know distance isn't everything, but if we look purely at the stats, the majority of golfers are playing a golf course that is too long for them. They're hitting a lot of long clubs. So actually having something that suddenly goes 2 clubs further is a massive advantage. You think you're effectively hitting 8 iron into holes that you would normally be hitting 6 iron without hitting your driver any further. And obviously the benefit is that is you've got a shorter club, so therefore you should have more control of the ball in terms of dispersion. That is a massive advantage out on the golf course. Now, I've tested these loads on the range before bringing them out on the course, and I don't really see any difference in terms of dispersion to what I see in other clubs. So you're kind of just getting that extra distance without too many negatives. So we're down at 126 yards now, and I think this is almost where it gets a little bit interesting. This set comes with a gap wedge as part of the set, and to be honest, when I first saw that I was really confused, but actually these clubs go so far, you need this, because otherwise you would have a massive gap between your pitching wedges and your other wedges in your bag. I mean, I carry a 46, a 52 and a 58, and my 46 does not go further enough to gap to this pitching wedge. The pitching wedge is carrying like 135, so it's 20 yards longer than my 46-degree wedge. So you definitely need this addition, because each club goes so far, you need more wedges. There's one slight disadvantage. Now again, it's kind of a similar theme. This definitely doesn't spin as much as the equivalent in, say, like a specialist wedge or a thinner club, but you get so much height on it that you do still have the stopping power to stop this on the greens. You can see there that I even span back. So I mean, there is enough spin, you just got to hit it properly. I was really against this when I first got it. I'm not gonna lie, when I first opened the box and there was a gap wedge, and I was a bit like, I'm not sure how I feel about that. But actually after hitting it now, like, it's so solid off the face, it feels so nice, and it's actually quite nice to have a shorter wedge that you know is gonna have a bit more ball speed, say compared to like a typical like wedge you'd use for chipping or out of a bunker. And you know when you pitch with them, they don't always have the full speed that you want off the face to kind of get that right window and fly to the green. So it is nice to have something extra like that. My only thing is, it is a little bit thicker on the sole than you'd kind of maybe expect from a player's iron. So in terms of like little half shots and things like that, they don't always feel quite as controlled as they could do with something a bit smaller. So these are the PXG 0311 Gen 6 irons, and they're the P model. So there's two models in these. These are the more player style club, and then the XP are meant to be a lot more forgiving. Now, one thing I would say with these is they're definitely on kind of the top spectrum of players distance club, because they are going so far. And I would say personally, I kind of would have liked maybe another model that's a little bit smaller, because I think there is a pretty big gap between, say, like the PXG blades and then like these. In terms of shaping, like if we look at the 7 iron, it is quite big. There's like a long toe to heel shaping. What I do really like though is there isn't loads of offset, which you can sometimes see in a bigger club. But I just wonder if maybe they're somehow missing the mark on kind of that middle ground of someone who likes something that looks a bit smaller, but then you're getting so much distance. Can you complain about it being a little bit bigger? Now, what I love about this is I went down to the Drift, which is the PXG fitting centre, and it was one of the best fittings I've had. And obviously in my role, I've had quite a lot of fittings, but they were really specific about the swing weighting. So you can see in the back of the club head here, there's loads of weights that can be customised. And I didn't really realise how much this would affect like my dispersion and my consistency. I'll put a graph up which shows like the different weightings. They tried like 12 grams, 14 grams the back of the head, and showing how the dispersion changed was really interesting. And just talking to me and asking like what I like the feel of. Do I want the club head to feel heavier? Do I want it to feel lighter? Which is something no one had really touched on before, and I think it really elevated the performance of like the final club. Okay, so we're 190 away, and I've got 4 iron. You've just watched me hit 6 iron 185. All will be revealed in a second. It is a little bit into the wind, to be fair as well. This is probably the only place where I think you start to see a little bit more offset in the club, but with a 4 iron, I'm not really bothered. So that has basically pitched pin high. So it's pretty much gone like the same distance as my 6 iron. Well, not exactly. If we look deep into the TrackMan data from my testing, this averaged 193 yards, but that's like just under 10 yards longer than my 2 clubs shorter. So although gap wedge to 6 iron all kind of go like 20 yards further, you start losing that at the top of the bag. So the 5 and the 4, I think it's pointless having 2, to be honest. When I've been using these out on the course, I've just taken the 5 out. It allows me to have the extra gap wedge in at the bottom. And then the 4 iron I can use as that off the tee club. It goes a lot lower. It's harder to hold the green with. I'm not getting as much spin with it. But to be honest, I use a 4 iron when I'm just trying to get it in play off the tee. You know, I'm looking at the hazards and thinking my driver's not going to hit the fairway. That's definitely not where I should have hit it. I think that is a little bit of a disadvantage of obviously the club's going so far. There gets to a point where you don't have the attack angle, the speed, the height to get all the carry distance out of those longer irons. So that is something to consider. If you're ordering a set, you might not need all the way up. Maybe just get to 5 and strengthen the 5 a bit to be like a 4, rather than running all the way through. That will then obviously give you space for that extra wedge that you're probably going to need at the bottom of the bag to gap between the clubs, because the pitching wedge goes so far. Now that is such a powerful ball flight, like that is so good in those scenarios where you links, you want something to get kind of low and get going. I'm not sure it's perfect if you're maybe on like an American style course and need to lob it up onto a green, so that is something to consider. But I mean, there's always going to be like pros and cons in sets like this. So to be honest, I'm like really torn about this set of clubs and whether to put it in play. There's obviously so many advantages. The distance is a big one. I know I'm going to get people in the comments saying the 6 iron is just a 4 iron, the lofts are jacked. But the reality is, if you can hit a club that's a 6 iron, so a 6 iron length, as far as a 4 iron, you're going to have more control with that shorter shaft. The dispersion's really good, I can see that. Some of that comes from the weighting in the club head. There's more weight in the heel and the toe. It's going to drive up that MOI. So for me, in terms of distance and dispersion, like these are really good and like definitely worthy enough to be gamers. I think the only thing for me comes in the fact that this is meant to be a player's club. And personally, I think it's probably slightly larger than I would say a player's club maybe necessarily should be. And it's not that I really hate the look of it. I just think in some scenarios, the sole feels a little big to me if I'm on a slight downslope or in a little hole, I don't necessarily feel like I can control the strike as much as I would like to. And I also think currently I'm probably using the smallest clubs I've ever had, and I really have that ability to hit a 3/4 shot if I need to, and don't feel like there's loads of balls being off the face and I can really control that. I'm not quite sure if I get the same here, but it's a balancing act, isn't it? How often do you hit 3/4 shots? How well do you hit 3/4 shots anyway? How often do you end up in a little hole? Does that balance out, you know, basically being 2 clubs nearer the green and the improved dispersion that gives you? So, to be honest, I've been super impressed with these irons. They've been the first PXG irons I've tested. I was blown away by the performance, the fitting, the distance is off the charts. So if you're looking for more distance, like, I wouldn't really look anywhere else. And to be honest, if you're looking for new irons, these are a big standout. They still might go in the bag. I need to decide. Maybe that'll be another video.